welcome to this edition of the Odds On Favorites podcast, where we're talking sports entertainment, all with an eye on the bottom line. I'm Drew Goldfarb, joined by Taylor Smith. Rick Rockwell still has the day off. Let's start with football this week. We're going to begin with college football. Last week, we previewed the Big 12 Conference heading into the 2019 season. This week, our attention turns to the ACC. Oklahoma was the clear-cut favorite in the Big 12. The ACC, a similarly clear-cut favorite, the Clemson Tigers. Taylor, how good can Clemson be yet again this year?
Yeah, it'd be pretty big shock if they weren't right at the top again. You know, Trevor Lawrence is going to be a sophomore, and he's already one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best in the country. He's a Heisman hopeful. The biggest question mark with them is defensively. They only have 4 starters returning. They lost a bunch of guys to the NFL, but you know, the fact that their biggest threat in their division is probably Syracuse really tells you all you need to know. So, yeah, it'd be fairly shocking if they weren't in the playoff and by default winning the ACC again.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough to pick anybody else when Florida State had their worst season in 40-something years a year ago. I mean, that division is just – it's theirs. Trevor Lawrence could win the Heisman. I know that Tua is the front runner from Alabama, but I mean, it's got to be one of those two. If you're going to pick someone this far out, you're either going with Bama's QB or going Clemson's QB. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, geez, and the kid is like, what, 20, 19? He's outstanding. The Clemson Tigers are easily the class of their division. They won the Atlantic last year pretty handily. Syracuse finished in second place and were 2 games back. In the Coastal Division last year, things were a bit tighter. The Pitt Panthers won the division crown by a game over Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech opens the season with Clemson this year. Virginia, Miami, Virginia Tech, all within 2 games of Pitt at the end of the season last year. Does any team jump out from that division this year, forgetting Clemson in the other side for a moment? Is there a team that jumps out to you from that division?
No one really stands out. It's a quality division, kind of top to bottom, but there's not really a top-tier team. A lot of people are hyping up Virginia, but we'll see if they can actually get past Virginia Tech, who they haven't beaten since 2003. Miami's a little interesting. They should be solid defensively with their new head coach, but the offense has plenty of question marks. You mentioned Pitt as returning champions. They only have 10 starters on both sides of the ball total coming back, so that's pretty much an unknown team we have over there. Duke has a tough schedule, plus they just lost Daniel Jones to the NFL. Mac Brown's back at North Carolina, but they got a freshman QB there, and we'll see how that turns out. So, you know, there's a lot of unknown. It's going to be a dogfight. I think Virginia or Virginia Tech are the teams you would probably want to bet on. They just look like the least uncertain at this point. But if you want a little bit of a sleeper, I guess Miami is a little bit interesting too.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to say, oh, the U is back all the time, because there's a number of instances in the last decade where it's looked like the Hurricanes might be on their way back. You know, there were people last year predicting that the Canes were going to win 10 or more games and, you know, really challenge, and that wasn't the case. I mean, they have a new head coach, like you mentioned, Manny Diaz replacing Mark Richt, who retired. They've got a new QB, and that might be the key, is Tate Martell transferred from Ohio State. If he can play to a really high level, I don't know that the division that they're in is strong enough where, you know, good play from their QB and keeping everything else constant might not just be enough. Not going to be enough to face Clemson, but or to beat Clemson in the conference championship game. But, you know, Miami's one of those teams where they're always one that I would love to pick to win that division every year or most years. But they're one of those teams where it's like it's never their year. It always looks like it might be their year, but it's never actually their year.
Yeah, their year hasn't been their year since 2002 or 2001.
Pretty much. Since they joined the ACC and everybody was going, man, we're going to get Florida State, Miami in the ACC Championship Game every year. We are yet to get it Florida State, Miami in the ACC Championship Game any year. Because Miami wasn't good while FSU was up, and then FSU backed down a bit, and Miami still isn't even really that up at this point. But We agree that Clemson's going to win the ACC for the 5th straight season. But will they also qualify for the college football playoff for the 5th straight year as well? They won the national championships in 2016 and 2018, finished in 2nd place in 2015, and lost a semifinal game in 2017. By the way, both playoff losses came to Alabama, with the Tide winning the national championship both times, and both national championship game wins for Clemson came over Alabama. So this might be the best non-in-conference rivalry in the nation in the last 5 years at this point. So Taylor, will the Tigers make it 5 straight appearances in the playoff, and will we get another Clemson-Alabama matchup in the postseason?
I like the chances of that. I like Clemson's chances of making it more than I like the chances of that rematch. But if you look at their schedule, there's really nothing there. The conference schedule speaks for itself. They have Texas A&M out of conference at home, I believe. So that's not the most daunting matchup either. Assuming Trevor Lawrence stays upright, and if the defense can actually, hold up with all the new faces, I think they'll be fine. So yeah, I wouldn't bet against them making the playoff at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to be in. We went over it in the last video when we were talking about the Big 12, where Bama's a lock barring something really unforeseen happening. Clemson's a lock, and then Ohio State, Michigan, one of them should get in, and Oklahoma should get in, but, everybody will make a case for Georgia, against the Sooners. There isn't a team out of conference that should even hang with the Clemson Tigers this year. Texas A&M you mentioned, and it's like, this isn't Johnny Manziel's Aggies. I don't see it. I don't see there being any reason to pick against the Tigers. And I like the idea of their chances of, if Bama and Clemson are the 1 and 2 seed, I at the very least like Clemson's chances to win a playoff game to get back to the national championship again. They're a team it's kind of like Alabama. You pick them until they prove you wrong. They've been that good to make the college football playoff 4 years in a row, to face Alabama in the college football playoff 4 years in a row, and either have Clemson or Bama win the national championship in all 4 of those years. I wouldn't bet against either of those teams at this point until they're mathematically done. And even then, I would just think they'd go like, I know Bama's 9-3, but, their losses came to great SEC teams like Mississippi State, Tennessee.
They still get in, yeah.
LSU, yeah.
You could go 500 and probably still get in. It's Alabama.
Yeah, that's right. Well, but in that case, they'd be the 4th seed, with Georgia being a 1 seed and LSU in, and they'd sneak, Florida or Ole Miss or Arkansas or something, because that's what everybody really wants is a national
SEC tournament. Yeah.
Another SEC tournament. Yeah.
Yeah.
In truth, I would not be opposed to an SEC championship conference tournament to lead to the SEC championship game. Like if they wanted to do away with 2 of those garbage non-conference games, I wouldn't be opposed to every conference doing that. Do away with trash Wofford games and Sanford and,
all the Ford schools can go away. Yeah.
Right. Get rid of those and let's play like the top 4, play a divisional championship game and a conference championship game. Let's see that, because then we do get a rematch of Alabama, LSU or something like that, and then an Alabama, Georgia. And at that point, there's no question as to who the best team in each conference is in the country, because they would have played everyone in their division once, the second best team in their division twice, and the best team in the other division. So
makes too much sense. Yeah. Makes too much sense for college football to consider.
Hey, no, the NCAA makes all of their decisions based on logic and what is fair.
All right.
Give me 25,000 examples of where I've been wrong from the last year and a half. We don't have time for that. You could, but we don't have time. I hope you enjoyed that segment from the Odds On Favorites podcast. If you did, there's plenty more where that came from. Click on the link on your screen now to be taken to the complete podcast from this week, or check out the channel to find the other individual segments. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel for plenty more sports and sports betting picks, tips, and how-to guides.